Hi, I'm going to read to you one of the poems from my book, Stations. It's published by Wise Blood Books. This is a book of poems that are based on the Stations of the Cross, which is a traditional Catholic teaching about the Passion of Jesus Christ. And so each of the poems is based on a different one of the stations. There's 14 stations, and so there's 14 poems in the series. And you can buy this online through Amazon or Wise Blood Books. And I'm going to read to you Station 5. Jesus is helped by Simon. Many years after the fact, when pressed by a stranger, I recall nothing of the act. But surely you remember, he insists, astounded by my ignorance or neglect, and yet I can only sigh. Who knows why memory selects one event, clinging tight, while others are released almost before they end. A night when I sat by a tree, teased by my sister until I fled into the dark and sat alone, angry with the world, my head resting on my knees, and a small stone, bruised my heel. I remember that bruise still, and that stone, small, hard, so real. My sister's words I no longer recall. But this man had fallen beneath a cross. A Roman pulled you from the street, told you to pick it up. It was... My memory is incomplete. But I remember the guard. Had a nose like a boar, bristled and thick and discolored, and on his neck an open sore. I was scared of the Romans, and then I was always afraid. If they'd said, kill this man. But I just did what they said. Filthy men, smelling of oil and wine and blood and olives. An entire race one must boil before touching. How do they live with themselves? But the Jews... I should stop talking. I'm old. I remember nothing, and choose to remember less. Yet, how bold you were. I saw you raise it on your shoulder. I saw you step forth. I was dragged, yet you came. What else could I do? They tried to get others. I do not like to remember. There were men there, his brothers, who do not fan this ember. Do you know who he was? I have heard things whispered about, but what the Jews are saying, that he was God. Do you know there are some who say he did not die? That he came forth from his tomb and walked among them and sat and ate and spoke, and I am not a Jew. I did nothing but for fear of Roman fists. And yet your name they sing, Simon, the one who held the cross for their Lord. Stop. What kind of God gets nailed to a tree and left for it? Stop. He laughed and touched my arm. What kind of God gets nailed to a tree? I mean no harm, old man. His small laugh failed. In the silence that followed, he rose, a shadow bending over me. What we remember, who knows? You, a filthy soldier, me, sighing. Some, Simon, some see in you a great icon of service and humility. A bitter old man, alone, that is all I see. Simon, I do not pretend to believe, but I will say just one more thing before I leave. Do not dismiss the good that comes upon you by chance. The gods, it is understood, pierce our lives with a brutal lance, and we must be prepared, as the Greek embraced by the swan, to find ourselves bared and abandoned. Yet placed within us is an urgent flame, a smoldering fire relit by their sacred touch, Their stain like a scar is upon you. Accept it. When I looked up, he was gone. I shook as if with cold and wept for what was done and what I had so cheaply sold. That was Station 5 from my book, Stations. I hope you'll get a copy for Lent. It's a good way to pray the Stations of the Cross is to spend a little time thinking about the different people that would have been involved there. And that's what this series of poems does. It looks at each station and imagines one voice out of the crowd in that moment, starting with Pontius Pilate in Station 1 and ending with the man who nailed Jesus to the cross and the disciple who brought him down and put him in the borrowed tomb. God bless you.